So we have a great show for you this afternoon. We've got the Meekum Smith Director of Big Red Athletics, Andy Noel, in the house.
Hey, man. Is that my introduction? Is that all you got for me, Webby?
That's not it. No. We're just getting,
okay.
We're just getting warmed
I'm only
up.
kidding. I'm only kidding. That's enough.
From Big Red Women's Ice Hockey, we've got Doug Darrow.
Thanks for having me, John. Looking forward to it. Good to see everybody.
Right. We've got men's soccer coach John Smith.
Hey, guys. Great to be here. Really looking forward to it.
From the class 2010, representing women's basketball, from Palo Alto, Lauren Benson Ford.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
Lauren!
Okay, so we've got to mute Linda Lurch. From West Friendship, Maryland, class of 1978, a track man and football player, Randall Nixon.
Yeah, Randy.
Hey, Andy. Hi, guys. Good to be here.
Randy.
Wonderful.
All right.
Thank you, Andy.
So we're going to start with Andy. He's going to give us as much of an update as he can on what's happening and things Big Red. So Andy Noel, go ahead and take it over.
Okay, Webby has given me about 8 minutes or so, maybe a little bit more, to make some comments and an update on the department. And I just want to say a couple things first. As I scroll through 9 pages of pictures of old friends like the Millmans and some not so old friends and then recent friends and graduates, it's really uplifting to see this many people that care about Cornell athletics. And I will tell you, and Webby will say the same thing, we are lifted and our morale gets a hell of a boost every year when we contemplate that there are 10,000 people or more who make a gift to Big Red Athletics every year. It's a staggering number. And without you folks, I don't know where it would be, but I just want to let you know I appreciate it so much. The second thing I really want to advance here before I get into sort of a state of the department, I just have to comment on the absolutely outrageous and upsetting circumstances of affecting our Black community. We have an awful lot of terrific friends within our staff and faculty and great athletes. And over the years, I've watched this unfold, and I need to understand it better. I need to be better at being able to articulate the atrocities that are happening day to day. And it's just very, very upsetting. And I want to state to you that our president, Martha Pollack, wrote a message, I think it was 2 days ago, that I read. It was, in my opinion, the very best message that I've read about the systemic racism and the responsibility we have and the actions that must be taken. And I just want to initiate this call to let you know that I personally am extremely upset by what I've been seeing. I actually played on a baseball team when I was 15 years old that crossed the Mason-Dixon with a Black coach and 90% Black athletes. And we sat in that diner for 20 minutes, and I didn't know what was going on, but they decided they weren't going to serve us. And that was way back in 1965. And here we are in 2020, and members of our Black community many of them are being treated just so inappropriately. And I'm not going to say more about it, but I just want you to know that's where my heart is. So, and I know maybe some others will mention that later on. I'm not sure, but I do want to make that personal statement. So I'm going to talk about 5 or so different elements right now to give you an update. And number one, I really think it's important to celebrate the incredible success that men and women's hockey had last year. And yes, it was heartbreaking to have those 2 great teams with 2 coaches that were both National Coach of the Year not being able to advance to an NCAA tournament and take their shot at winning the whole thing. And they both had an honest, great shot to do that. And then, in the spring, to have men's lacrosse win 5 games on the road, including wins over Ohio State and Penn State, 5-0, ranked number 2 in the country, and to have their season cut short. My hat goes off to those teams and many of our other teams. They're not the only ones that suffered the heartbreak of losing their season, but those are three teams that had an honest shot at a national title, and they led the department in success this past year. And Doug, you know, you're here, you're going to say a few words. I want to recognize those great efforts. And at Cornell University, without scholarships, to have three teams on the cusp of being recognized as the best team in the country, I think it's a special thing. At the same time, we have a heck of a lot of sports at Cornell out of our 37 that aren't doing as well as they need to do, not doing as well as we'd like them to do. We have to stratify some of our resources. We can't provide all the resources that each of those 37 teams need. We're doing our very best, but we have a lot of work to do on the competitive side, but I really felt it was important to recognize those teams. And by the way, sailing, which is relatively a new program at Cornell, fully endowed by the men's sailors who don't even have a program. How about that? The men's sailors step up and make gifts to endow women's sailing. And they finished third in the country this year, which again is a terrific accolade. And so we care about success. I'm hell-bent on it. Perhaps more important than success is for our athletes to have a positive experience, but there's a hell of a lot of positivity in being successful at the Ivy or the national level. And that's what we're driving for. So I want to give you a little bit of an update too on our facilities. We have a lot going on with facilities. We've got Newman Arena that needs new stands or massive repair. It's the original equipment that we had when it was the Alberding Fieldhouse way back in the day. Now it's Bartels Hall, Newman Arena. We have work to do there. Oxley Equestrian Center. This might shock most of you, not all of you. Somehow our Oxley Equestrian Center never received a certificate of occupancy from the day it was built, God knows when. I've been here since '74, and I know we've had that facility for a long time. And so now the town of Ithaca is making us do some major work with sprinkler systems and lighting and other code issues, and it's going to be over $1 million. So we've got that situation on hand. We also have two swimming pools that were the original pools in their facilities in Teagle and Helen Newman. We just invested $1,050,000 to bring those pools up to speed for a period of time, not forever. We don't do a great job with maintenance as a university. One of the greatest challenges we have is deferred maintenance. And our athletics department that hasn't had a maintenance budget since I've been AD, and it's 21 years, we're supposed to figure it out as we go along, raise the money. But we've got to do a much better job keeping our facilities up to speed. We are doing massive work on the Crescent this summer and for a number of summers consecutively to repair degraded concrete. So there's a hell of a lot going on with facilities. And when you have a department with 37 teams, there's always going to be a challenge and something going on. So I wanted to let you know we're focused on those areas, and we're thrilled with some of the beautiful upgrades that we've had over the past many years, but we really have those areas to focus on right now. Relative to budget, many of you have heard some of this before on various committees, but this is year 21 for me, and we made our budget 20 consecutive years. And we did that through additional fundraising. We went from $2 million to $7 million in fundraising annually for the gifts and support of operations. And of course, there have been a lot of endowments and other capital projects, but we've only been able to keep up on the shoulders of our generous alumni, parents, and friends. But we have a situation this year with our budget where for the first time ever, we put in a plug number of $1 million into our budget as income. So what that means is on our budget sheet, we stated that we were going to raise an additional $1 million above and beyond what we normally raise. And my boss and my boss's boss, everybody knew that that was a plug number, but we can't enter the budget that doesn't balance in the university system. So in order to just enter a basic budget, we had to basically pretend we had another $1 million. And so interestingly, because of the pandemic and not having travel in the spring, not having recruiting in the spring and officials and all sorts of other expenses, we've actually saved that amount of money. So my 21st year, we will balance our budget as long as our annual fundraising goes well again. That's not exactly how I wanted to balance the budget. In fact, it absolutely broke my heart not to have the end of the winter season and the spring season. It was just an incredibly difficult scenario to deal with. As we move forward each year, with the university taking a major hit because of the pandemic, I have been told very directly that every single unit on campus, lab of ornithology, library, athletics, you name it, so many different entities and units on campus, everybody is going to collectively deal with the amount of funds that the university lost in this pandemic. And it's not only in the many tens of millions of dollars, depending on scenarios of return of students, it can be as much as 200 million. And so we are anticipating, and we have been told to look at possible reductions in our subvention of 5%, 10%, 20%. I can tell you quite bluntly, if we end up getting a 10 or 20% ask to reduce, we can't do it. We're already going to deal with $1 million one. We're not going to be able to do it. We may be able to do the 5%, which is a little bit over 500,000, but I'm just giving you the honest facts that depending on how big the challenge is for the entire university, athletics will do all we can, but I have to tell you, I'm not going to do what Brown did. Many of you know Brown dropped 11 sports within the past week based on their financial circumstances, and I don't have the stomach to do that, and won't do something that dramatic. Someone else will have to do it. I won't do it. We've been keeping it together for my 21 years, Charlie Moore's 5 years, and many of Lang Kennedy's years. And I just can't be extended anymore in plans to keep it together. We do need additional help. And you alumni, many of you on this call, have been part of the reason we've been able to hang tough all these years. So I also want to mention that we have a focus on gender equity in Title IX. We actually had an audit from an outside firm that came in, gave us a bunch of recommendations. We have plans in the works. We've made some decisions about locker rooms and different ways to fortify our women's program and budgets and out of region travel, you name it. We've looked at it. And we've had a committee meeting once a week for many, many months to drill down into the nuances of this, to really, really bring us into an equilibrium and an equity equilibrium. Interestingly enough, when I started in my job in 1999, we had 52% men on campus, 48% women on campus. That has really switched. We now have more women on campus than men. So that balance of participation numbers has become increasingly challenging, and we are we're working hard to identify measures to have the balance that we need to have. We have a terrific new member of our legal council, by the way, by the name of Rob Hoon, who's really smart and a really great person, who cares about athletics deeply, who really understands what's going on. He was in a Power 5 school for a while. He's a really super person to have with us to help us work through some of these scenarios. I also want to mention, and I did allude to it, the annual fund for the Big Red is so critical. Many of you remember we literally spend the money that we budget during the year. So we budgeted $6.5 million for our annual fund this year. We stand at a little bit over 5 million right now. The month of June, we've been averaging the last 7 or 8 years, we've been averaging $1.5 million. And there was a year, 2 years ago, where we actually raised 7 million. That was a one-time jump from 6.5 and 6.3 to 7. But John Webster has really done a lot of detailed research, and he can tell you that if folks who've made gifts over the years consistently, they've given previous years, but not this year, that accounts for about 1.7 million. So in the month of June, we worked pretty hard with our outreach to bring in those gifts from our generous benefactors over time who haven't yet made their gift. I just have to tell you that without that annual fund, we are not in a good place at all. We really rely on our parents, friends, and our former athletes, our alumni, to bridge that gap between what the university provides for us and what we really need to spend to offer a first-rate program. Actually, Charlie Moore, and I don't know if he's on the call yet, but he's the one probably 24, 25 years ago to say to the university, I'm not going to drop 10 programs to make ends meet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to raise the money. So we'll have 10 self-funded programs, we'll have donor-funded programs, but we're not dropping them, and I'm going to raise the money. And Charlie drew a line in the sand nearly a quarter of a century ago, and we have held it together for that period of time. And so heartfelt thanks to all of you who support the Big Red on an annual basis. I also just wanted to mention, and I failed to mention it when I spoke about facilities, but thanks to 4 very generous gifts, 2 from trustees, 1 from a presidential counselor, and 1 from a very loyal former athlete that will be impacted by this. We do have significant plans that the president has blessed to have an outdoor or a covered facility. It's an indoor facility large enough for an indoor lacrosse game, a men and women's indoor lacrosse game, large enough for a full field football practice, except maybe for punting straight up in the air, but certainly a full field. And it is a facility that is to serve the entire Cornell community, not just varsity athletics, but varsity athletics, countless club teams who quite honestly do not have a place to play and compete and practice. It's brutal for our clubs, and there would also be an opportunity for intramurals. But when Ryan Lombardi, my boss, was at Ohio University, the last thing he did before he came to Cornell is he built one of these facilities. And he tells me it opened at 6 o'clock in the morning and it closed at 2 a.m. and they had 4 hours to clean and put stuff back together. But it's the kind of facility that when it's available to students, they use it almost 24 hours a day. At Ohio University, they used it 20 out of 24 hours. When this building is up with a total budget of 25 million, 2 million of it is for maintenance, a maintenance reserve. But that facility will be so crowded with students and folks at Cornell that want to work out, that want to practice, that we will wonder, how did we survive without that facility? We're at $18.5 million. We need to get to 25. When the pandemic struck, that project was put on hold for a year, which doesn't really hurt us because it would probably take us a year to raise the delta between 18.5 million and 25 anyway. But I want all of you on the screens to know that this facility would change the face of our campus community relative to recreation, varsity sports, and club sports. It will be the most fantastic addition in my time, certainly. And again, it's on the shoulders of loyal alumni, parents, and friends. And so far, without going out to the masses, 4 people have generated $18.5 million. So you can tell by the number there that we've got some incredibly generous folks that are supporting all of our students, not just varsity athletes, but certainly varsity athletes included. So I'm going to stop there. I don't know how much time I've used, but if there's Q&A or if people have questions, Webby, you let me know if you want questions now or questions at the end, but I'll stay on as long as anybody wants to stay on.
Thank you, Andy. That was great. We really appreciate that. And we will have time for Q&A at the end, and we will encourage everyone to use their chat function to submit questions. And Nadia and I will monitor the chat, and we'll make sure we get questions to either coaches or our alumni panelists. But we appreciate that update, Andy. And so now we're going to move to John Smith, the head coach of our men's soccer team. Andy talks all the time about recruit and develop, recruit and develop. You're not going to be successful without great athletes, and it takes a strategic recruiting program to get them here. And we have one of the best recruiters, we believe, in the country in John Smith. He's doing a super job with our men's soccer program. And I hope that we're playing in the fall because they're going to be really good. And so without further ado, John Smith from men's soccer.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Andy. Yeah, I want to give you guys a little bit of an insight as to how we go about recruitment within our men's soccer program. So what I'm going to do is I want to share my screen. Hopefully you guys will be able to see everything here. Let me know if, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Yes, awesome. Okay. So this is the first thing that we look at. This was our team. This was our fall, our lineup last fall in preseason. Great team. We had a great season, an exciting group. Obviously, this includes the seniors that aren't with us anymore. And this is what that squad looks like on paper. Now, that is a little bit of a fib because obviously the seniors aren't on this squad outlook, and the guys that are highlighted in green are actually our incoming freshmen. And for any former Cornell soccer players on this who are on the call right now, please don't read anything into who's written first, second, or third. That's basically done by seniority, so it's done by year. But this is definitely the team that we are both hoping and expecting to win the Ivy League this year if we're fortunate enough to have a season. So I can't help but look at this diagram, and it just gets me pumped up. It gets me excited. So what we do when we look at this squad outlook, we're assessing the depth we have in each position, you know, which really determines what we then go out to look for from a recruiting standpoint. Now, when I go recruiting, the first thing that I ask myself when I look at a player is this guy made of the right stuff? Does he have the right character traits? In my opinion, soccer is the most imperfect sport out there. Now, other coaches might disagree, but even the best soccer players in the world, like your Lionel Messi's or your Cristiano Ronaldo's, they're making mistakes a good 20, 30% of the game. And so for normal players, it's considerably more than that. And so what I like to do is to watch players during and just after those moments of imperfection, because I genuinely think at that point in time, a person's going to reveal what's on the inside. So for example, if I'm recruiting and I go watching a central midfield player and he's got a simple pass to make, and it's obviously the pass he should make, but instead of trying that pass, he goes for something absolutely audacious and it gets picked off by the opponents. They run down the field and they score. Now, for me, that's not my moment to check this person's name off the list. That's the moment where I'm going to go, boom, here we go. Let's see what you're made of. Because in that following 5 minutes, what you typically see from some players is they hide, They feel sorry for themselves. They don't want the ball anymore. And then you'll see the other guys who point fingers and they blame their teammates. Or you'll see the guys that just roll their sleeves up and get on with it and get after it. Those are the guys I'm looking for. So why is this so important to us? Well, I'll give you a few reasons. So what I've always said is that I want to recruit guys who show up to play on Sundays. In college soccer, you've got a lot of kind of Friday, Sunday weekends. You play Friday evening, you play Sunday lunchtime. Everybody shows up to play on Friday nights. It's a Friday, it's 7 p.m. The lights are on, there's a decent crowd, it's pleasant weather. Everybody's happy. It's just pleasant. Everybody shows up to play in that game. That's not necessarily the guy I want though. I want the guy who shows up to play on a Sunday. And you just lost the heartbreaking game on Friday night, by the way. You lost it in overtime, and your Sunday game, it's a noon kickoff. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's 100 degrees, but you're on AstroTurf, so it's 120 degrees. I want the guy who shows up in that game. That's the guy who's made of the right stuff, and that's the guy who's ultimately going to win you things. So the guys who are made of the right stuff, in my opinion, they're never going to be a pebble in your shoe. They're going to help get every single nose pointed in the same direction. They'll work hard and they won't ever give up. They'll relish every single thing about being part of a team. They will 100% know how to compete, and they'll be passionate about improvement. They'll be selfless, and they'll also have the ability to look within to find solutions. They'll stick their necks out because that's what you want, and they'll think like winners. They'll frame every single thing they can do in the positive rather than the negative, and they'll continually set that bar higher, etc., etc., etc. And I'll give you an example. So we have a player on our team, and I don't normally single players out, but Jonah Kagan, he's a rising junior. 4 years ago when we were recruiting Jonah, the game that stood out, and it was the game that we said 100%, that's the guy we have to go after, was a game where his team was actually losing 6-0 at halftime. And he came out in the second half. He was the only guy on his team that never, ever stopped. He was the only guy being positive with all of his teammates and just continued to have the energy, the drive, the enthusiasm, and the desire to keep on going. Hence the fact we recruited him, and hence the fact that this, just before we were told that school was going to close, we made him one of our captains, which is impressive to name a junior a captain of a team. So it wasn't a surprise to us. Now, once we've seen that somebody is made of the right stuff, what we do is we ask ourselves, all right, this guy's got it on the inside, but can he play? Based on all of the characteristics of what we look for from a player in that particular position, can this guy play? So this is just kind of an example that we have a role document for every player in every position. And it's considerably more in depth than this, but this guy gives you kind of an idea of like a checklist. We'll go watching. This is for a striker. If we're watching a goal scorer, these are some of the things that we'll look to tick off to make sure that, you know what, yeah, he's made of the right stuff. And by the way, this guy can play as well. Now, once we've identified a potential player, it then moves on to the sell, the huge part of it. We've seen somebody, we like him. All right, can we sell? Now, I've added this sheet in here, and I think for most of you guys on this call, this stuff is a given. It's you already know this, the experience at Cornell is 100% a transformational one, 100%. It's a world-class research university. You are surrounded by a culture of excellence. And you do have access to thought leaders, people that are just they're absolutely at the top of their game. And then from an athletic standpoint, you know it's going to be a professional training environment. And you know you're going to be around driven teammates, and you're going to be playing great schedules with passionate coaches. But this isn't what we use to sell. Now, my reasons for that are most of my opponents, this is what they sell. They sell the academics, they sell facilities. And although that's important, I think it is a given here. So what I sell is the human aspect, is the human element. And what I mean by that, and the reason why we do that is a few reasons actually. Being a student athlete is vastly different from being a regular student. If you're a regular student, you show up on a campus as a freshman. You have a good old chin wag with this group of people over here, and you think, you know what, they're not my type of folk. I'm going to go over here, and you have a chin wag over here. You think, you know what, they're not my type of folk. You go to the next group until you find your people. Well, when you're a student athlete, you don't have that luxury. Somebody comes to play for this program that's stuck listening to this voice for 4 years. And they're around largely the same people. Obviously, people graduate out. But if they're not the right kind of people, it can severely sour your experience, regardless of how amazing the facilities are and how incredible the school is. On any given year, I'm in charge of around 30 18 to 22-year-old young men. And they're going through some of the most wonderful, weird, exciting, and absolutely heartbreaking years of their lives. And during those moments where things aren't going swimmingly, it's not the name of the school that's going to wrap its arms around. It's not the facilities. It's the people. So instead of selling the trophy cabinet or the win-loss column, because I do think when you do that, it's my opinion that players only ever look at themselves as a number within a production line, and they judge themselves based on those numbers. Instead of doing that, what I want to do is I want to sell a journey. And so here's part of what the journey in men's soccer, I think, and in sports in general, will teach you. On a journey, you'll learn how to get 30 individuals to fly in formation. You'll learn how to encourage somebody who's facing the other way to get back on board. How do you convince and encourage that person to come back in with both feet? You learn how to push your emotional and physical boundaries. You'll learn how to compete with and outdo someone who plays in the same position as you. And once you've done that, you'll also learn how to pull them over your shoulder and carry them through so you can keep pushing each other. You'll learn to succeed and to do so with class. You'll also learn to pick yourself back up when you stumble and you fail, and be ready to do the same for your teammates, by the way, when they do the same thing. It's a journey where you'll learn to relate with people from all walks of life and all backgrounds. A journey where ultimately, when you leave the comfy confines of a place like this, you are 100% equipped with the necessary tools to both cope and succeed in this big bad world. And by the way, while you are on this journey, we will win things, but the winning of things will just be a byproduct of this incredibly wonderful journey that you're going to be on. Thank you, guys. That's what we do within our recruiting, amongst many other things.
Hey, Coach Smith, thank you very much. That was awesome. Really appreciate that. And next up, now I'm seeing a ton of questions in the chat room. I promise you we're going to get to those questions. And Andy said he's going to stick around for as long as folks want to stick around. We really appreciate that, Andy. But next up is Coach Doug Dara from the women's hockey program. Coach Dara led his team to an undefeated ECAC regular season record this past year. They were the #1 seed going into the NCAA tournament before the rug got pulled out from under us. And he is the reigning NCAA Coach of the Year. Please welcome Coach Doug Dara.
And if I could hop in real quick, John, if you can stop sharing your screen, I'm going to pull up Doug's slides.
Thanks, Nadia. So
I
All
did
set.
stop sharing it, Nadia.
Is anybody else still seeing John's slides?
No, he stopped sharing. Zoom has been a little funny today. We've had some, Randall Nixon referred to it as some atmospheric conditions.
I'm hoping that you can see my slides now.
Not yet.
Not yet.
No.
It's all right if it doesn't come up, Nadia. Everybody can just view my beautiful pandemic hair that I've grown here for the last few months.
Well, why don't you go ahead, Coach, while she's working on seeing if she can figure that out.
Well, thanks a lot, everybody, for getting on the call, and thanks for supporting Cornell athletics the way you do. We can't do it without you. I'm here to talk about athletic development, but I'm a little more technologically challenged than Coach Smith is, so Nadia is going to help me out with some slides potentially. If not, you'll have to listen to me for about the next 10 minutes. But as Coach Smith said, just to touch a little bit on recruiting at the start, that's where it all starts. It starts with the character that you're bringing in, and everything that we do before they even get to Cornell. We talk about how we're going to challenge them and how Cornell is going to challenge them. We're going to challenge them athletically to reach beyond their grasp. Cornell is going to challenge them academically. And they're going to be challenged to be better human beings than they were when they arrived here. And so for student athletes that don't want that challenge, then they're not a good fit for us. But when I first came to Cornell, the program was struggling a little bit. We were pretty desperate for talent. And sometimes as a coach, your ego gets a little bit ahead of you and you think you can change everybody. And yes, you can develop some people's character. But I'll just give you a little story that I like to tell, and I think I've told it at reunion before, so some of you may have heard this story before. But when I first arrived here and my daughter was 9 years old, I had one of the top players in North America come on an official visit. My wife was gone, so I had to bring my daughter with me to the office that day, and so brought her into my office, sat her down at the table. I think I gave her a coloring book to do some coloring. A recruit came in, sat down in my office. I started talking with her about Cornell, and through the conversation, she was texting and looking at her phone and so on. And anyway, I didn't make a big deal of it. We continued talking. Some players came in and they were going to bring her to class, so they came in and grabbed her and took her to class. So I sat down at my desk at my computer and started working on my computer. And my 9-year-old daughter got up from her coloring and she says, "Dad, are you going to take that player on your team?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know." And she said, "You better not, Dad. She was so rude to you." And sometimes it's plain as day for a 9-year-old even to understand that sometimes you just have to pass. And the good thing about that story is that she decided to go to Harvard. So it ended up being a blessing in disguise. They never won with her. So sometimes you dodge bullets that way too. But for us, we get started with our athletic development before they even arrive. We talk a lot about teams and team building, what it means to be a good teammate, what it means to be a good leader, what it means to be a good follower. And I think that gets lost a lot of times. I think sometimes people see being a follower as sort of a negative, but you can have the greatest captains in the world, but if you don't have players that are going to follow those captains, then you're not going to be successful. So even before we get going in our team building, every year we like to shake it up a little bit. So we'll read a book or two with our team. And last year what we did, we read the book Energy Bus by John Gordon. And this is a really good book about team dynamics, what it does mean to be a good leader, what it means to be a good follower. And the other book that we used was Mind Gym by Gary Mack. And this book, more individually oriented. It helps with players with confidence and focus and everything. So to make them successful as an individual as well. And that's something that we really stress with our players. To be their best development-wise, we have to make sure that, yes, we have training for the team in general, but that we're doing everything we possibly can for the individual as well. So in our training within our team, we try to make sure that we're doing everything we can possibly think of to help that player be their best. And we tell them we're going to do that, but that's a two-way street, and that they've got to want it as well, and they've got to do the work and put the work in. So when the players arrive on campus, obviously have medical screening, medical testing. We have a great trainer, and I think that Coach Smith alluded to this too. Really important that you have the right people within your staff and within your program. It's the people that are going to make the difference. And so it starts with having a great trainer like we do in Katie Harris. And then we do a little extra things as well that other programs don't do. And again, it's about going above and beyond. So we do functional movement screening with all of our players. And the functional movement screening is a series of tests. It's a series of movement pattern tests that we do with all our players. And some of it's to prevent injuries, but also it is to help in performance too. So I can give you, it's maybe my most extreme example. We had a defenseman here, it was the worst skating defenseman I think that we've ever had here. And my intuition is, as a coach, to tell her, hey, you need to go out and power skate. We need to go out and do speed work with you. We need to, get out and do all these things. And in the functional movement screening, what we found is she had a real ankle mobility issue. It was all locked up. And you could do this at home if you want, if you got a wall somewhere around you. I just said to her, I said, I just want to see you put your foot an inch away from the wall, and I want you to touch your knee to the wall. Well, she could not get her knee to the wall without her heel coming off the ground. So if you cannot get into the positions that you need to be able to get into to be a good skater, all the power skating in the world, I could have done that with her for the next 100 years, wasn't going to make her a good skater until we addressed the mobility issue first and unlocked that ankle and gave her the mobility and range that she needs to have to be a good skater. So sometimes you got to backtrack a little bit before you can move forward. So having expertise in that is very important, and Coach Louise does that with us. For our team, our biggest strength and the reason that we've been so successful overall in the NCAA, we've predicated our game on speed. And so to develop speed, for us, there's a number of things. So first, it starts in the weight room. And we have, again, your staff. We have Coach Dane. And most strength coaches are geared towards running sports. You're talking football, lacrosse. A lot of the major team sports in college are geared towards running. But it's really important to us that our strength coach understands that skating and hockey is much different than running, although I'm going to show you some similarities in a minute, but maybe not on the screen. But that understanding that you need to train hockey players differently than you train running sports, and that the muscles that are needed to be trained are different. And Coach Dane has spent a lot of time with us working on exactly that. What is it that the hockey player needs, and done a lot of studying, and has been very flexible in that regard. And that's been really important to us as a program, making sure that our strength coach, first of all, understands what our needs are. So then after the strength part of things, working on the speed. So the off-ice speed. So Coach Louise, her background is in track and field. She was a track athlete, but she works with a company called Pro Skaters Incorporated, and it was an NHL skating coach that worked with NHL hockey players and AHL hockey players, pro hockey players, and her job was to work on their speed off the ice and develop their speed off the ice. So she studied the skating coach, the NHL skating coach, and the movement patterns that we have on the ice, and then has worked on training that off-ice speed off the ice. And so also now we're getting some of our videos up. So this is from the weight room. And I always say that in skills and drills, we really want to focus on skills. Anybody can run drills, but it's really important that we're paying attention to the technique, we're paying attention to the details, and that we're teaching. And so if this video is able to play, Nadia, you'll see on this is just in the weight room, one of our players, Kristen O'Neill. But the strength coach is right behind her, Coach Dane, is really paying attention to technique, paying attention to the details, making sure that she's doing the exercises correctly and that we're training our players correctly. Anybody can run a drill, okay? But it's really important to us that we're teaching and paying attention to those details. So as I was saying with Coach Louise, so with Coach Louise, working on her speed, and it starts with your start. And if you look at this diagram here, you'll see the similarities between the skater and the runner. And the runner on the my lower left is Micah Zandy Hart, one of our players. And then you'll see a skater over on the right, and you'll see very similar arm movements and somewhat similar leg movements that are involved in both the skating start and the running start. And it's been proven that if you can improve your off-ice speed, there's a direct correlation to your on-ice speed. And I think we're the only program in the country that I think really pays attention to those details off the ice and teaches it technically off the ice to develop that speed on the ice. And then I had a short video of Louise just working. Again, this is Micah Zandy Hart right here, just working on her coming into a stop and get it out with the bands and pressure. So you can see the arm movements, the leg movements, the making sure that she's doing it technically correct. And then what we do is that there's a direct correlation between what we do off the ice and then what we do on the ice. So now they've worked on these things off the ice. We bring them on the ice and we say, okay, now we want to see that exact pattern on the ice, and making sure that we're paying attention to all the little details, which I won't get into, but you will see. So now this is Micah Zandy Hart on the ice, and the correlation between what you just saw off the ice and what she's doing on the ice. We're very fortunate here at Cornell. I've got the ice booked for 4.5 hours, 5 hours a day now. We're not able to do that every day with players, but we have skill sessions in the morning before school starts, so the girls can come out. The coaches are with them there in the morning to be able to do the skill sessions, and then we have 2 hours in the evening to be able to work on stuff in practice as well. Of course, we do testing throughout the year. We have off-ice testing. We have on-ice testing. That's something that has really changed over the years for us in our program. It seems like every year I'm upping the ante. The athletes are getting stronger. They're getting faster. They're coming in fitter. And so with our testing, we have standards that we have with the team, but we also have individual standards because, quite honestly, there's some elite athletes on our team that just blow our team standards out of the water. We have to make sure that we're challenging them as well and making sure that we're setting up standards that are going to force them to work their hardest to be their best as well. Technology, obviously a huge part these days in training and in development. The screen you're looking at here right now is something that we use during the season. This is a game breaker that we use. And you'll see, if you look on the bottom left, you'll see names of all the players. I think there's face-offs, penalty kill on there. What we have is we have a manager in the game. We have about 40 things that we code, and every player's name is on there. So every time a player steps on the ice, our manager hits a button. Every time they step off the ice, it's another button on the computer. And then during the week, we can come in with those players and we hit a button on the computer and we can see their shifts one after another and go through it with the players. So, you know, hockey sense is a big part of hockey and hockey IQ, and being able to help them with their decision making. This goes a long way to that part of their development in game scenarios. And we do a lot of that with our players individually as well. But technology is crazy these days. You can trace just about everything from their sleep patterns, nutrition, stress levels. You know, you can go as far as we can track whether their left leg worked harder than their right leg in practice. I mean, it's everything is out there now. Quite honestly, for me, I'm a little bit old school, I guess, but I think it's pretty simple. I think it's practice and feedback, and it can't be just one or the other. You know, you can practice all you want, but if you're not practicing properly, that's not helping you. We can give the player feedback, all kinds of feedback, but if they're not working on that feedback, that's not helping them. But if they have that combination, if you've got that work ethic and that drive, and you've got coaches that are teaching you and giving you the feedback, then I think those two things, it's not, you know, it's maybe not the most exciting answer in the world or the sexiest thing in the world, but quite honestly, that's what I really think makes the difference, and that's what leads to players becoming their best athletically. Of course, here at Cornell, I'll just touch upon this briefly at the end here. We want our players to develop in all aspects of their life, not just athletically. So we try, you know, Cornell University is going to challenge them to be their best academically, but also off the ice, challenging them to be the best citizens that they can possibly become. And so putting them in different extracurricular activities with different parts of the community. So this is from FoodNet here, where FoodNet feeds the elderly around this area. We also have a big sister, little sister program called the Cub Club. So all of our girls are big sisters for little sisters throughout the community. Our girls also work with Habitat for Humanity, so building homes in our area. They've also gone abroad to build homes abroad. Feed My Starving Children, where we pack meals for starving children around the world. So, you could go on, but the overall goal is to develop them athletically, develop them academically, and to develop them hopefully into conscientious citizens of the world that are going to go out and make our communities a better place. And so with that, I will end. I had one highlight video. You hope that after all of this development and all this work that they put in and that you put in with them as coaches, that it leads to final highlight like we'll show you here at the end. Potentially.
Ross tried to fire it into the slot, but it was deflected by Zandy Hart, and now taken up away. A breakaway. Frechette, game on her stick. She scores. Cornell is going to the Frozen Four. They win it in overtime. Frechette, her 7th goal of the season, and
Thanks everybody. Thanks for your time.
Comes to a stunning end.
Love it. Absolutely terrific. Coach, thank you so much. That was great. Really, really good stuff. And I've enjoyed watching Kristen O'Neill play for the last 4 years. And you realize when you see her in the weight room, it's no mistake how fast she is, how good she is. And I don't know if anybody else noticed, but the musculature of her lower body was impressive. Holy smokes. That was great. Really, really super. Thanks, Coach. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce Lauren Benson Ford from the class of 2010. She is the first player in the history of Big Red basketball to score 700 points, have 500 assists, 300 rebounds, and 100 steals. Talk about an all-around player. Please welcome from Palo Alto, Lauren Benson. Welcome, Lauren.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm sheltering in place in Palo Alto right now, so nice to be here. First, I would like to thank John, Andy Noel, and the Alumni Affairs and Development staff for having me on this panel. Just knowing the caliber of Cornell grads and the amazing things that they're doing both personally and professionally, I was really honored to be asked to talk about my experience at Cornell and how it had an impact on both my collegiate career and beyond. So today I'd just like to talk about 3 takeaways from my experience playing basketball at Cornell that I found influential in my life today. And those were the strength of the athletics community, what it took to win the championship, and some key lessons I learned through basketball that transcend beyond the sports environment. So the community that had become so influential was at first a bit daunting. But being a student athlete, as Coach John Smith had mentioned, you're immediately introduced to a smaller environment, a smaller community. And through that smaller community, you have this sense of belonging from the get-go. And maybe it's because we all wear basketball or sports teagles that made us feel like we belonged. But it truly gave me a sense of pride and gave me a sense of pride in the classroom to represent my sport. And it also gave me a sense of pride representing my school in competition. But also gave me a sense of equality. And part of that was, for the women's basketball team, we had a direct comparison with the men's basketball program. But we truly had the same support staff, the same access to events and activities that they had. And I think that equality really strengthened the relationship, both with that team, but across the entire athletic community. The other thing that the Cornell athletic community gave me particularly were friendships. The most obvious one is my best friend, and that's my husband, who I met through the Cornell athletic program. But also it was through first my teammates. My teammates and I still have a really good relationship today. We're on the WhatsApp group together. We're constantly pinging each other. And the really cool thing is that now that even though we can't support each other on the court, we're supporting each other through our next phases of life. And a lot of that right now is parenthood. And you can imagine that going through parenthood for the first time, you're going to need a lot of support, and you're pinging a lot of funny things back and forth. the other friendship I made was with my coaches. I can tell you that during practice, when I was on the line for a sprint, I was not thinking I was going to have a good relationship with my coaching staff afterwards. But sure enough, they had faith in me as a player, and they also supported me personally. And even now, when they're on recruiting trips, especially when I'm in the States, I'm able to look forward to those meetings, especially during their recruiting trips. And then finally, I'd like to talk about a relationship I grew from the local community. Through the Rebounders Club, which is the official fan club for the Big Red Basketball, which most of you, or some of you who are on this call right now, are part of. I met a woman named Mrs. Carolyn Sampson, and she and I formed a great relationship over the course of my career. She was my Cornell parent, especially when my parents couldn't make it to basketball games from Chicago, excuse me. She was able to be there in the stands, cheer me on, and we still have contact today. We email frequently, and we even met up in Rome when she was on vacation there. So that was really fun to see her there as well. This just goes to show that relationships like these show the true strength of the Cornell athletics community. And communities become a lot tighter when you're working towards a common goal. And for me, I was so fortunate to play for the first 2008 women's basketball team, or the 2008 women's basketball team, where we won the first Ivy League championship. And it was a very special team. We were a group of ladies, very diverse. We came from different backgrounds, ethnicities, nationalities, personalities for sure. But Coach Smith stressed that it was through those differences that truly made us a successful team. And I think that we as a team understood that we had something special. We were very strong basketball wise, but we had a unique part about us that made us truly lean on each other. And we came together before the season, and we talked about the little things that we could do to commit to winning an Ivy League championship that year. And we had faith in each other that we were going to commit to it and stick with it through the entire season. Lo and behold, we ended up winning the Ivy League championship that year. We faced UConn the first round of the NCAA tournament. And although we lost pretty big actually, it was such a special season and such a special year. And I think all those sacrifices, the teamwork, the hard work, the trust in each other that we had is why we were successful. And it was that through that framework of success that I learned what it took to win a championship. And also I was able to apply that framework of success in my professional life when I started my career at Nielsen in Chicago, working in professional sports, and then now eventually work overseas. So my family had just come back from Rome, Italy, where we spent 3 years living abroad, working for the US Embassy. And living overseas, innately comes with some challenges, from language barriers to cultural differences, managing expectations. But athletics provided us with the skill sets to thrive in such an environment. And it also gave us a chance to have a much more rewarding experience overseas. Just think about it. Sports allows you and teaches you to become adaptable. As a lot of the coaches I just talked about, there's a constant cycle of new players. You have to deal with injuries. You have to learn to adjust on the fly, reacting to defenses, ad-libbing with plays. And you also have to be mentally tough. And my husband and I, who also played the sport in college, we took on those challenges kind of like how I would take a full court press. We stayed calm. We worked together as a team, and we did have to improvise at some points. But it's through those lessons that we learned through sports where we were really able to thrive in that environment. And in Rome, I worked for the community liaison office, and that primarily had me working with the American community. But what Cornell taught my husband and I is that you can have a really great experience with the close-knit group that you're with, but you can have an even greater experience if you step outside your comfort zone and really deep into the community and see what all Cornell had to offer. And we did that. We had different groups at Cornell we had different friends outside the Cornell program, athletics program, that really enhanced our experience even more so than it already was. And in Italy, that opportunity showed up one day when I heard that there was an Italian women's basketball program. And I had a connection to reach out to them. So more so out of desperation, because after all the pasta and pizza and gelato I was eating, I was kind of desperate for some physical activity. And I reached out to them thinking that I would just be able to, you know, practice every now and then. And it ended up being, I ended up being asked to play for the team full time. And I was the only American. And it took some time to get used to, but we had such amazing experiences. I think both sides, they thought it was fun having an American on the team and learning more about our culture. And I absolutely loved learning about the Italian culture through the means of sport. And I so wish I would have had a diary during that time, because the interactions that I had were definitely worth noting at that time, because I can't remember all of them now. But imagine me just running down the basketball court yelling aiuta, which is help in Italian, and all the basketball girls kind of knowing what I was talking about. I truly don't think I would have had that basketball experience in Rome without the Cornell athletics kind of paving that way to step outside my comfort zone. It's safe to say that athletics played a huge part on my collegiate career and beyond. I think basketball provided me with opportunities that I never thought I would have, from lifelong friendships to a chance to represent the greater institution. Basketball also provided me with a framework of success that our team had, that our team used to help us win the Ivy League championship. These life lessons also apply to today with us traveling and living overseas, and it's a very special community to look back and know that I was a part of that. And I couldn't be more thankful that Coach Smith and her staff gave me the opportunity to play for Cornell and represent the Big Red. And I'm looking forward to that community thriving for years to come. And I hope that my daughter can be a part of that, I think, class of 2042. So get ready for her. And John, I think that's the end of my wrap up here.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you so much. That was really fun. Really appreciate you being here. Appreciate your participation. And next up, from West Friendship, Maryland, from the class of 1978, he ran track and field. He was a football player. He's been an extraordinary volunteer in many different ways with the Cornell Black Alumni Association, with the Cornell Alumni Ambassador Admissions Network, and other things. Please welcome, from the class of 78, Randall Nixon.
Thank you, John. You see in that picture, I have both my Cornell tie and my 150-year anniversary little pin. So I never leave the house without something Cornell on, even if it's just underwear and socks. My experience, I could not have gotten through Cornell without sports. It was a wonderful release for me. It was an opportunity for me to really get to know the university. It was an opportunity for me to develop friendships that literally stay with me to this day. Lauren talked about her relationships with her teammates, and literally to this day, I still have, those guys are some of my closest and dearest friends. So it had a profound impact on me. The thing that I came in 1974, and all campuses were in a period of turmoil. This is after, for us, it was after the straight takeover in 1969, and there was always, this is the end of the Vietnam War, so there was a great deal of unrest, and it was a difficult and challenging time for the country and for Cornell. And coming into the school, I had a pretty interesting background. I'd gone to a very tiny prep school. I was literally one of 5 African Americans in my school. And so I was looking forward to an experience which was both inclusive and exclusive. I wanted an experience that was academically challenging, but I wanted to feel like I was a part of the university. And the other blacks in my prep school class all went to the Ivies. So we all went to Ivy League schools. My brother went to another Ivy, whose name I will not mention, and had an absolutely horrible experience. And recommended after we visited the campus that he said, "This is the right place for you." And I said, "Why?" And he said something that echoed with me. And he says, "This is a place for egalitarian excellence. People are welcoming here," and they weren't welcoming at his Ivy League school. The thing that I experienced on both track and football teams was that we felt that we were by far the most diverse group of people on campus. As I said, this is the 1970s. The school was, and all schools were going through a lot of tumult. And we on the sports teams felt that the university felt very balkanized to me. And we all say as Cornellians that we're 7 colleges in search of a university, but I felt that the school was very balkanized because America was very balkanized at the time, not at all unlike the way it is now. And we felt that we were the glue of the university. Track and football was by far we were the most diverse group of people ever. I had teammates from every college. I had teammates from every major. I had teammates from every ethnic group. We had white guys and black guys and Asian guys and Latino guys, and there was a kind of egalitarianism. There was an equality about being on a sports team. And we felt, and to that degree, we felt exclusive. We felt that when we went other places, when we went to other schools, it was clear that we were representing the university. And when other students go out and do things, they don't necessarily do that. They don't necessarily represent the university. And we took a lot of pride in being a diverse group of guys, both intellectually diverse, ethnically diverse, and we took a lot of pride in being good athletes. Our track coach, Coach Warner, used to say, he said, "What I want you to do is be able to beat them in the classroom and beat them on the track." And that was a great motivator to all of us. So we called non-athletes civilians at the time. I'm told now that my kids tell me, my kids are classes of 12 and 15, and they tell me that non-athletes are called muggles. So never having read the Harry Potter books, I really don't know what that means, but I suspect it's not good. So the experience was molding for me. I felt a great deal of power from having the experience of being around a group of guys. And the great thing about being an Ivy League athlete is that nobody puts a gun to your head and makes you do it. You have to really want to do it. You have to, no one would, the running joke on the track team was that we would make fun of our coaches, and Coach Warner, the head coach, would say, "You better look out or I'm going to take your athletic scholarship away." And all of us had been recruited for sports. I had been recruited mostly at D2 and D3 schools, but all of us had been recruited, and we had made a conscious decision to all of us for various reasons, had made a conscious decision to walk away from scholarship money. And that was a tough decision. My father died when I was 15, and my mother was the only person supporting us. My brother and I were both first gens. We didn't know what first gen meant at the time. It wasn't a term of art. So we were, it was a challenging time financially, but thank God, my mother said, my mother was the person who was a great believer in Cornell, and so she was the one who really picked out Cornell for me and pushed me to go to Cornell. So and it was a challenging time in terms of enlightenment for a lot of people on campus. There were racial incidents on campus. It was not always pleasant to be on campus because there was a lot of racism. But I do have to say that it was whatever prejudice I experienced on campus, and I did experience some prejudice, the prejudice was never institutional in nature. I got all kinds of support from my professors, some of whom I dearly loved. And whenever I see one of my old professors has passed, it really does bring tears to my eyes. And the administration always did support me. And then of course I always had my teammates. So I can talk about Cornell all day, Andy.
Thank you.
Hey, Randall, that was great. Thank you so much. Hey, I've got an exciting announcement. Andy Noel and I have made a game time decision, and Andy wants to share something really, really special to us. So I'm going to hand it back to Andy right now.
So everyone, I'm glad there's so many people on the call. This morning, John Webster and I completed the Hall of Fame balloting for next fall. And we had a meeting last night, lengthy meeting last night, lengthy meeting this morning. And I could not be more thrilled to announce that Lauren Benson is in the new Cornell Hall of Fame class with 700 points, 500 assists, 300 rebounds, 100 steals, 3-time first team All-Ivy, the all-time leader in games played, career minutes, go on and on, 12 statistical categories. Lauren, you are an awesome athlete. You advanced ahead of an incredible amount of terrific Cornell folks who were recommended. And I could not be more thrilled that you are in the class named this morning.
Wow.
And as Webby said, we never announce this stuff until the letters are sent in a couple weeks, but we're so excited, and you did such a terrific job speaking today. We want to have this whole group be able to congratulate you, and we wish you well, my dear, and looking forward to the fall induction.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Woo, congratulations.
And that's the first time you got my husband to put on a collared shirt this entire quarantine. So.
So he's on the call. Webby got a hold of him during the call to see if he could join us. Your husband was a super athlete as well. So what a family. It's a genetic engineering project that we're looking forward to in the years to come.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Lauren. Okay, so Andy has promised to stick around for Q&A, and so we encourage you to chat your questions. We already have a bunch of them, and Nadia, I've been so busy. Nadia, can you get us going and send a?
Yes, yep, I can, and I'll apologize for my internet. The irony was that I upgraded to faster internet this week, so that was a fail. So thank you to my teammate Keith Hannon for running our slides. So Andy, this is one for you. Do you have any sense of what the fall semester will look like?
Well, I must say that at this moment, and I just had a lengthy director of athletics meeting this morning with the Ivy office, none of the schools have made any decisions in stone at this point. I do think there is some honest susceptibility that some of the fall teams will have a hard time competing. We athletics directors are not giving up on any sport. We want every single sport to compete this fall. And there are issues that we're working through, including, believe it or not, since football is the only sport in the mix in the fall that does not have a path to a national title or an Eastern championship, we are even willing to seriously consider, if it doesn't work with the presidents to have fall football, of having a football season in the spring with Cornell against the other 7 Ivy opponents.
Going in spring right now, Andy is.
So, so there's nothing in stone, but it's certainly not a given that we're going to have competition this fall. Everybody wants it, and a lot of it has to do with the direction that the pandemic takes between now and the end of June, or now until maybe mid-July. But I'm quite concerned about it because I really feel the terrific benefit that our student athletes receive from competition. There's all sorts of tangential issues that can occur if we don't have a particular sport compete. Some kids will withdraw from school. Some kids could transfer. You know, some of the freshmen coming in could defer admission. And, you know, it can go a million different directions. But I want to make sure I'm crystal clear that everyone in the AD arena and the Ivy League office is fully behind working out the nuances of scheduling and protecting the health and safety of the participants. We're all working on this very, very heavily. But in the end, particularly in the state of New York, with Cornell and Columbia Ivy schools in New York, Governor Cuomo has a lot to say about this. And so I just hope that it all works out. We're doing the background work that's necessary to show the presidents that we can figure this out, but they're going to make the call. The presidents of the 8 universities will make the call. It is important also to say that not all the Ivy League presidents think the same way about this. So this is not all 8 schools are going to do one thing or not. Different schools will make different decisions based on the locale of their campus, based on the size of their student body, based on their preparedness to deal with all those things that have to be attended to. So in this case, not all 8 Ivies will do the same thing.
Thank you, Andy. So I've got a question from Jake LeClaire, and I'd like to pass this to my colleague, Amy Foster. I believe Amy's on board. And Amy, what progress has happened this year in the area of mental health with student athletes, and what opportunities are still faced in this area? Amy, you want to take a whack at that?
Sure. Thanks, John, and thanks for the question, Jake. It's obviously a really important topic, and one that I think our student athletes in particular have really started to heighten awareness on. So there have been a lot of, they've taken a lot of action recently as teams, and also through our student athlete advisory committee to establish green games, which provides a platform where they have their competitions designated to increase mental health awareness. So that's one piece of the puzzle, obviously, but something that I certainly want to mention. On top of that, from an administrative standpoint, we've heard a lot about Katie Harris already on tonight's call. She's the athletic trainer for women's ice hockey. She's also a terrific connector for our athletic department to CAPS, so the counseling and psychological services at Cornell Health. And so with Katie and the rest of our athletic training staff, I think we've really worked hard to establish a more efficient pathway from our athletic department to CAPS and the services that are available there. So a huge thank you to Katie for that. I have a couple other things, and then I think she might be on the call too. I can hand it off to her a little bit. One of the other things that Katie has been involved in and is establishing a new committee of health professionals, so doctors, counselors, and then the student athletes, athletic administrative staff, our coaches. So we put together a committee to, again, increase conversation about what the needs are for our student athletes, with hopes that we can continue to improve those services. And that committee has really been active this past year, and establishing and talking about groups to help injured student athletes, or other specific groups that might be helped through mental health awareness. And then the last thing that I can think of is we have Let's Talk consultations available right in our athletics facilities. So in Bartels, we started having some Let's Talk, and we've moved it to Teagle. But Let's Talk is a drop-in service that's offered through Cornell Health, but having it in our athletic facilities has really opened up the opportunity for our student athletes to just drop in, walk in, start the conversations that they need, and then continue to have those conversations through Cornell Health. So we're really working hard to continue that program as well. We've seen that open up the conversation, and our student athletes really taking advantage of that when they're in the building and just able to walk in. Katie, are you here?
Yeah, I just logged on just as you guys were starting to talk about that. I mean, I think you covered pretty much everything. I think our committee has done a really good job just listening to the student athletes and what they need, and just trying to help them along, with everything with mental health. So, but I think you covered everything.
Thanks, Katie. Sorry to put you on the spot, but
no, that's okay.
Katie really has been the lead in helping us make progress forward in this area. So thank you, Katie.
This is Andy again. I would like just to quickly add that my sense among our student athlete population that the stigma to ask for help has been dramatically reduced because of these programs and because of the work of Katie and others. We're really seeing a major benefit there. It's not embarrassing for students. I shouldn't say for any students, but the stigma is really reduced from a number of years ago, and it's thanks to all the hard work of the staff.
Hey, John Smith, I think you might be, I'll send this one to you. How does video recruitment affect the oncoming classes of 2022 and forward? So I think what the inquiry here is, how are you using this format, if you will, in the recruiting process, and what kind of will coaches take into effect the impact that high school athletes are suffering from Corona?
Well, the hope is that ultimately you're going to get to watch every single person live. I mean, that's what I like to do. It's the way we use video is it's an opportunity to get some backup evidence to support your theory on a particular player, or not support it. Obviously, this is a little bit different. For the last 4 or 5, or 3 or 4 months, we haven't been able to actually physically watch somebody live. So we've done a heck of a lot of video recruiting. I like to recruit through people that I trust, people that actually know me and know what I look for, and they know the kind of environment they would be sending a player to. And so a lot of it is contacting people that in my opinion just get it. They get it as far as knowing they'd be teeing somebody up for success if they came into this program. So it's a lot of conversations with coaches that I know, and then just watching tons and tons of film. And then it becomes, I never thought I would actually be recruiting via Zoom, but that's what we've been doing. I mean, 2 extremely gifted guys have recently committed to us via Zoom, one of which I haven't seen live, which is it's fairly rare for me, but I do trust the people that I've spoken with, and I do trust the footage that not just myself, not just what I have seen, but my staff as well. And so, but that is a little bit uncharted territory. It's obviously a difficult situation for high school juniors and seniors that haven't been seen up until this point, and I really don't envy them, but I never really envy potential student athletes going through the recruiting process, because it is finicky, to say the least. But hopefully that things will be lifted. I think in soccer anyway, things are getting lifted in certain places, so you could actually get to watch people live, and hopefully the whole concept of no stone being unturned from a recruiting aspect can continue.
So, Coach, we're going to keep it right with you. We've still got 142 people on board. We appreciate everybody's interest. Coach, can you talk about the difference between recruiting for Stanford and Cornell? And thank you, Harry Pachetsky, for that question.
The difference, to be quite honest with you, one of the reasons I came to Cornell is because the situation that I was going to be inheriting here from the squad that I was in, taking over, was very similar to the squad that we took over at Stanford in 2012. So I wouldn't say there was a great deal of difference, other than the fact that both schools are very challenging in terms of admission standards. So there's not really much of it's a wash in that regard. I think we lose out to a certain extent on facilities. The facilities at Stanford are off the charts. But as far as the campuses go, both campuses are incredibly beautiful in very different ways. I've gone about things exactly the same way with my recruiting, because like I said, I recruit more on the human side of things, and it goes both ways, from a player to me and from me to a player. And so it's never really mattered to me where I've been. So I don't think it's vastly different. I think we're building ourselves up to be a top 25 program. When we first got to Stanford in 2012, they'd had 5 losing seasons in a row. I think they were 120th in the country. And then 4 years later, we won the national championship, and then they won again and again. Now I'm building up towards that here. And so I think you can win a national championship here in men's soccer. So I really don't look at it any different. I think if there was an area where I think I know my associate head, Drew, I coached Drew at Stanford. I think he would agree to this, that people at Cornell are more studious. It was very rare that I walked around the athletic departments at Stanford and saw anybody that had cracked a book open. Whereas you can't walk in Bartels Hall here. Sometimes you're dodging people left, right, and center who have got the laptops open or are reading books, and you're far more of a student athlete here. Whereas at a Stanford, you go on road trips at Stanford, you miss 5 days of school in one road trip. Whereas here, we're only allowed to miss 5 days over the course of the entire season. So it's definitely more conducive towards being a student athlete. I think that's probably one of the areas I would say that it slightly differs.
John, I'd like to ask John Smith specifically. John Smith, tell us about the pitch. It's not all the facilities, but tell us about the pitch that's been developed.
Yeah, the field when I first got here is vastly different to the field that's here today. You really couldn't play. Soccer is a game that's supposed to be played on the ground, and you couldn't really play on the ground when I first got here because there were kind of clumps of grass all over the field, and so it made for it was entertaining, that's for sure. It was because it wasn't really soccer, but the field now you could basically eat your dinner off it. It's like a carpet. It's a genuine, true run of the ball. It makes for I think for our strikers, it puts pressure on them, because if a striker spoons a ball over the bar, he can't blame the ground anymore, and because the ground is just in pristine condition. So we play some great opponents each year. Last year we played Akron away, one of the top 5 in the country, Michigan State away in Michigan. Our field was better than theirs, and it has been since it's been done. It's been one of the top fields in the country. So we feel really fortunate. I feel really fortunate that Andy and the athletic department decided to to invest in a incredibly flat and beautiful soccer surface.
Thanks, Coach. So in a moment, we've had a lot of fun with this in the many Zoom town halls that we've done, but I encourage everybody to turn on their video so we can see in your room. And in a second, we're going to invite everybody to unmute and we're going to have a free-for-all. You can give a shout out to your favorite person out there. Shout out to the coach and alum, whatever you want to do. We're going to take that mute button off in just a second. But I want to ask Coach Dara one question first, and then we're going to give Andy Noel the last word. Coach Dara, you have done a super job cultivating a wonderful community support. Can you talk about what that support from the broader community means to your team?
You know, when I came to Cornell, a lot of the other coaches around the league told me how fortunate I was to be at Cornell for two reasons. One, the support that we get fan base wise, especially from the community, but also from the school itself. And secondly, the support that our sport gets from our administration and the other coaches. You know, I was a new coach at the time. I didn't really know much about it, but as the years have gone on, I've come to realize that, and that's why I've been here for 15 years now. After coming in, just thinking I was going to be the interim coach for 1 year, but also for our players to also be involved in the community. And as I said, we want them to be great citizens wherever they go in the world, and hopefully within our structure, we give them opportunities to develop relationships within the community, relationships with different kinds of people throughout our community and you know, abroad as well. So, but I know, you know, going to John Smith's recruiting, it's a big factor for us in recruiting as well, that we have such a great fan base, and quite honestly, there's no other school in our league that gets the fan support from the community like we do. And I've had coaches and coaching conferences ask me how we've built that support, and quite honestly, we're just very fortunate that that we live in a community that that does support our program, and it makes a big difference for the girls. They don't get that opportunity very often to play in front of big crowds like we do. And Coach Schaefer actually told me that our fan attendance in the playoffs was higher than 9 of the 12 men's programs in the ECAC. So that's pretty cool that we're building that fan base.
Thanks, Coach. That's great. Congratulations once again to Lauren Benson Ford for her induction into the 2020 Big Red Athletics Hall of Fame. And Andy Noel, you get the last word.
Well, I'm going to say thank you, everyone, for being on the call. It was terrific. There was one question that I saw come across that was a question from a lacrosse person. Will Jeff Teat return to Cornell to play next season? And the answer is yes. So how about that? Katie Harris, I need to talk to you after the call, if that's possible. All right, everyone.
So turn your video on, unmute yourselves, and have at it. Happy reunion, everybody. We really appreciate you tuning in. Oh, I forgot about this. Thanks,
Okay, Katie, let's go red.
Go Big Red. Go Big Red.
Go Big Red.
Tracy Clippinger, nice to see you, Trace.
Good to see you. Miss you guys.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks, John. Thanks, Andy.
Field hockey rocks.
Red, great, so orange.
Battaglia.
Okay.
right, very
Red.
nice.
See you, buddy.
Enjoy,
Thanks,
enjoy the
everyone.
rest of
God
Congratulations,
bless y'all.
Lauren.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
John.
you.
Oh,
Happy reunion.
congratulations,
Bye.
Lauren.
Thanks, Andy.
Congratulations.